Well, with energy prices rising faster than ever, and particularly gas, we need to find some ways to try and reduce that expenditure. We're going to give you some tips now. Tried, tested and proven. Welcome to Grey Matters. Hello there and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and looks at issues that matter to the older generation. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe and feel free to comment. We always welcome comments on our channel. Well, electricity and gas prices are rocketing, particularly gas, and there's a lot of electricity companies now are struggling to make ends meet themselves because the cost of gas to them is getting prohibitive, and they're trying to find ways of supplying the gas without necessarily putting the prices up to you by too much. Unfortunately, for most people, it is going to be a substantial rise, and it's really quite frightening. However, there are some things you can do to reduce the amount of gas you use. Some of these you may already thought of, some you may not. However, let's run through some of them. The first thing to check is for drafts. Now, ventilation is an important part of air quality, particularly with COVID, but it's obviously going to be a drain on your heat supply. If heat escapes, if you can feel a draft, then you're going to be using more gas if you use gas for your heating than you necessarily need to. So here's our top tips for blocking those drafts. First of all, get a draft excluder for any doors that lead to the outside, which is where most of your air is going to come in. Now these are available from around £7 online, and you could even make one out of an old pair of tights stuffed with, I don't know, rice or something like that. Improvise, it all helps. You could also consider getting a letterbox draft excluder. You'd be surprised how much air comes in, cold air comes in through your letterbox. Silicon sealant. Now these are about £5 to £8 a tube. You can use these to seal any drafty gaps around the edges of doors and windows, around the frames obviously, because sometimes you will get that gap, expansion comes and draft will actually come through a gap in the frame. And the easiest one of all is just keep the doors closed to rooms that you're heating. You don't want to keep the doors open and the heat escapes throughout the house. Keep the doors closed. Those rooms will get a lot warmer and you'll then be able to turn your radiators down that little bit more. Tip number 2, the flow of your boiler. Now, a lot of people just rely on the thermostat to change the temperatures of things like water and heating. But the flow of your boiler is the temperature the water leaves your boiler. The default setting of these on the boilers themselves is usually far too high. It would have been set probably by the installer and never changed since. So check it. You'll probably find it's maybe 70 degrees and that's much, much hotter than you need. Octopus Energy recommend that if you've got a combi boiler, you set the flow temperature for 50 C for hot water and 55 for heating. It takes a little longer to heat up, but the savings in gas make it far more worthwhile. Now, if you don't have a combi boiler, if you've got a boiler with a hot water cylinder, Octopus Energy suggest that you reduce the temperature to around 60 degrees for heating and hot water. If you also have an immersion heater, hot water cylinder, drop that down 10 to 20 degrees too, because that uses a huge amount of electricity to heat up and you don't necessarily need the water that hot. It's the same with washing up, you know. People think that the washing up water has to be really hot for the washing up liquid to work. It doesn't. It's the washing up liquid that will kill the bacteria. If you wanted to kill it with hot water, you would need your temperature up around 100 degrees, which obviously is never going to happen. So even if your hot water, the temperature drops down a bit, it doesn't matter, because the hot water will help to dissolve the grease. The washing up liquid will kill the bacteria. Now, timing can be important as well. Most boilers and central heating systems will have a timer control. A lot of people believe that keeping it on constantly saves gas because you're not constantly heating up the tank. But in fact, it's been proven that that's not an economy, that's not a saving. The trick, however, is to set the timer to come on 30 minutes before you get up. Shut it off 30 minutes early as well. And there's no reason why you shouldn't have it to come on for an hour in the morning, maybe an hour during the day and a couple of hours at night. It just means that you're using less gas overall, and that's got to be a saving for you. Now, curtains. A quick lap of your home before sunset can help to cut your heating costs. Draw the curtains in any rooms that have got heating. Make sure that the curtains are tucked in above the radiator so the heat doesn't go up behind them. And again, I'm referring to Octopus Energy, and all I can say to them is no, no, no. They're talking about before you go off to work, before you leave the house, draw your curtains, keep the heat in. Please don't do that. I spent 34 years in law enforcement telling people that the last thing you want to do is advertise the fact you're not at home. And the only time people draw curtains during the day generally is if there's really bright sunlight and they're trying not to be blinded, or they want to see the television, or maybe if they're a night worker, in which case the curtains will be open by midday probably. It's a sure sign these days that you may be gone on holiday, because some people will still pull the curtains. If you're going out, your house should look as if it's occupied, and that generally means keeping your curtains open. So yeah, it might save you a bit of energy, but it also risks you getting your house turned over. Don't do it. Tip number 5, thermostat. Now, a lot of people will use their thermostats to turn the heating on and off. The best thing to do is to set it and leave it. 18 to 21 is ideal. 18 is better because you use that little bit less gas. I'm not saying that once you've set it you mustn't touch it, but try to avoid using it as an on-off switch. Set your temperature, try it at 18, see if you can live with that. You might need a supplementary heat source perhaps, or we'll talk about other ways of keeping yourself warm if it turns out maybe a little bit chilly. If you set it to one temperature and leave it, you will get used to that temperature and you can save yourself a lot of gas. And if anyone in the home is over 65 or has a health condition like heart or lung disease, you should make sure your home is warmed to at least 18 degrees. At least 18 degrees. Next tip, keep yourself warm, not the whole house. Considering which parts of your home need heating is a really good thing to do. It can be a big saver. When you're snug, you don't need the heating cranked up. Try setting your heat to about 18 degrees and using couch blankets, onesies, heat packs or something like that, just to keep yourself personally warm. If there are rooms in your house that aren't used much, turn the heating right down or turn it off, put it on the frost setting or whatever, save money. Heating rooms you're not using is a big waste of energy. You may want to consider thermostatic valves for radiators, well worth getting. You can set them all to maybe 3 and you will provide a nice bit of warmth for your home. You want to try and keep the temperatures constant. If the temperatures are going up and down all the time, that means you're using more gas, less gas, more gas. Try and keep it constant so your gas usage remains constant too. Tip number 7 is your radiators. Make sure that your furniture is not too close to your radiators. We've got this problem. The only place we can put our sofa is in front of a radiator. We've pulled it away from the radiator as far as we can until it gets to that point that it looks a bit weird, so we try to avoid that, but you do need to try and keep the radiators clear. The other thing is, don't dry your clothes on radiators. Okay, you're blocking the heat. I know you're getting your clothes dry, but you're not keeping your house warm. Reflective foil. Now, there's a trend, people will often shortcut this by putting cooking foil behind radiators. That doesn't do any good because the cooking foil as you know, if you've used it on a joint of meat, gets hot. And that hot transfers through and it will heat the wall, just as if you didn't have the foil there. Proper radiator foil is a bit like bubble wrap, but it's got a layer of foil on the outside. Now that bubble wrap provides an air gap and it stops the heat getting through to the wall. So all the heat gets reflected back into the room. You could also consider a shelf over the top of a radiator. That means that the air, instead of just disappearing up, will come out into the room. Now, shelves are, I don't know, 20 quid each, something like that. And the radiator foil you could pick up in big bulk packs for about 15 quid. It's not that expensive. Next tip, and I said about not playing around with the thermostat and maybe taking other measures to keep warm. We did talk about keeping personally warm a minute ago, but one of the best ways of doing that is to layer up. Use a mix of fabrics close to the skin, and that will keep your body much warmer. Instead of putting on an extra pair of socks, you'd probably be better off putting on another layer on your upper torso. Even just a t-shirt. If you keep the core warm, your whole body gets warmer. Okay, so heat the core. Your extremities, obviously some people really feel the cold in their hands and fingers, but aim for the core first, and then if you need to maybe put gloves on or extra socks, do so, but try keeping the core warm first. And finally, your chimneys, if you've got them. There are about 11 million chimneys in the country, and they are a huge source of heat loss. If you've got a chimney you're not using, block it off. An unblocked chimney is like leaving a window open 24 hours a day. There is a product out there called Chimney Sheep, which is used for blocking chimneys, and it's made from sheep's wool. I've only just heard of it, I haven't investigated it, but that might be worth a quick look and see what that's about. There we go. Now, some of you may be thinking that some of those tips aren't really worth doing. Let me tell you now that I have done all of them, and my savings so far over 2 months for gas, I've saved £20 in just 2 months. And I'm well on target to save hopefully £30 by the end of March. And all I've done is follow that advice. So you do save money with it. It's really worth trying. Now, if you've got any tips for saving energy, apart from me spouting hot air, which obviously helps to heat up a room, please leave a comment below. Let us know your ideas for saving energy. Share them with everybody else. We'd all love to know. And hopefully, come maybe 3 months' time, if you follow these tips, you won't have spent as much money as you might have worried that you were going to. We've got to be very careful now, those energy prices are going up. Thanks for joining me. I will see you next time on Grey Matters. Bye for now.